Cunningham, and the next hour is going to be very special because we have to notify you that I'm in a FEMA facility in Mason, and underneath more or less the transmitter 800-foot tower, and here with Steve Chabot, also Antoine Johnson and Manny Centeno of FEMA. And this is a serious matter. We like to have fun with many issues, but this isn't fun. This is information, critical information. And in case of a EMP, electromagnetic pulse, in case of a nuclear attack, in case of a flood, a tornado, God knows what's going to happen. This is a facility designated by the United States federal government to notify you as to needed information that you have to have in order to survive or in order to conduct your business affairs and get on with life. This has happened many times in the past, whether it was Puerto Rico or whether it was the hurricanes in the south or an EMP that hit Quebec in 1989, in which all electricity is down for many weeks or many months. Imagine a Cincinnati, a tri-state with no electricity. There's no television, there's no internet. The way that the government wants to communicate with you is through a transistor radio with fresh batteries, and where I am right now inside a FEMA facility in Mason. And that's the way the federal government will communicate with you about where to go to get food, where to go to get water. If you have personal communications to someone maybe in Columbus or someone in Lexington or someone in Liberty Township, this facility is what's going to provide that. And joining me now is Congressman Steve Chabot with the federal government. Steve Chabot, welcome again to the Bill Cunningham Show.
Thank you, Bill. It's great to be with you.
You know, I came here with a little bit of a smile on my face thinking this is going to be fun. But when you're in this facility, this is not fun.
No.
This is serious. So give us the circumstances from the U.S. government perspective where this facility would be turned on, in a sense taken over by FEMA to notify the American people where to report.
Well, we want to thank FEMA for their hard work in making this possible. And I think one thing we want to say, Bill, is we hope that this never happens. Because it will mean that we're facing a very serious emergency in our nation, whether it's an attack from a foreign entity of some sort, or a terrorist attack internally, or a horrific hurricane or earthquake or something of that sort. And what we're trying to do here is to communicate from the government or other sources of information to the people out there who may be wondering what's going on, how am I going to survive, how is my family going to survive. And so here, right here, WLW, 700 WLW, and again, so people can kind of orient themselves where we're at. This is the huge tower on Towersville Road. It's we're below that, but in a facility, this thing's about the size, I would say, of a medium-sized camper or something. And as I'm looking around, I see large cans of garden green peas and scrambled eggs with bacon I see up there. I know we're not going to crack one of those open here today.
No, there's no shrimp flambe and lobster Newburgh.
No.
We don't have that.
We got a 60-day water supply, I understand, and you literally would be in here, two people in here if the worst happened. I think Curtis Fuller of Channel 5 hit the line of the day when he told Bill Cunningham that it was reassuring, or maybe not so reassuring, that if the worst came at the end of the world, the last voice he's going to hear is Bill Cunningham.
Curtis is funny now. He's
yeah.
funny. And I went back in time. 1922, we were born. And Powell Crosley gave us birth. And this facility arrived in about 1932. Powell Crosley in College Hill said, I want to go way out in the country, into a high part of Ohio, and buy a bunch of farmland in 1932. I would imagine then the farmland in Mason was quite inexpensive. So he built this like 60-acre facility. And the 1934 FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, turned a golden switch in Washington that took our facility from 50,000 to 500,000 watts. And for 5 years, we became Hitler's worst nightmare. We became the nation's stations, literally. And from Rosemary Clooney to Scott Sloan, from Roy Rogers to Eddie Fingers, this facility's been here now for almost 100 years. And what FEMA did was spend serious money to upgrade this facility, in a sense to harden it, so that it's encapsulated. And I asked one of the FEMA officials, well, what, assuming it's an EMP, which like either caused by the sun or by man-made purposes, it would knock out all the electrical circuits and all the transformers, and there'd be no electricity. So you could not use the internet, you couldn't turn on television, you couldn't turn on an electric light. And so in that way, Quebec went several weeks with that inability, but because it was somewhat isolated, they were able to get food in, get things out, and communication. But if in the Midwest was struck with, I would think EMP is the most likely circumstance, although it could be nuclear, that this facility would be protected by the National Guard to make sure it was available to broadcast. And I guess at our station, I'm honored that we've been selected. We're the second of 75 other facilities that are going to harden around the country. And in Congress, you provide the funding. The whole facility, the whole cost might be close to $100 million for like 77 stations or so to get this done. But that's why it would happen. A few weeks ago, the president sent out on all the cell phones an emergency message. I'm now in a bunker at the transmitter. Do you know something that I don't know? Because I'm thinking, I put two and two together. Do you and Trump know something we don't know?
If I told you, Bill, we'd have to get rid of you. So
You can't. So there's nothing going on immediate, because this is the terrible news yesterday and today that President Obama and President Clinton received some possible bombs in the mail. And we had Congressman Steve Chabot shot last year. So we live in difficult times in which the radical left and the radical right may try to do radical things, which is what they do.
Even George Soros apparently got a pipe bomb in his mailbox yesterday. So it's unsettling times out there. But fortunately, I think a facility like this, it's good to know that it's here if the worst does happen.
Ronald Reagan said that the way to have peace is to prepare for war. And the way to have the facility never to be used, we want this facility never to be used. We hope it isn't. If I'm ever here, it's a problem.
Right, absolutely. Well, it's the same thing as when you consider our entire missile system, our missile defense system. We never want to use those things. And in essence, if they're there, it's much less likely that a hostile nation, whether it's Russia now or China,
North Korea.
Or North Korea. Although North
Iran.
Korea, yeah, you wonder if those aren't the type of nations that might just be unstable enough that they would do something outside the mainstream. Probably not Russia or China, but let's hope we never have to use these things. We want the American people to be safe and be able to sleep at night and know that there's something there to protect them.
You talk about security. You're like a living congressman. And one was shot last year, and we got these other things happening today. How is your security different now than it was 22 years ago?
Well, we're taking measures that we didn't necessarily have to take before. We're lucky on that day that Steve Scalise was there. Now, obviously, he was severely wounded, but the fact that he was there probably saved a lot of other lives because he had security. None of the other members of Congress that were there had security, so his security was able to neutralize that shooter, took him down. And I would say our own Brad Winstrip literally saved Steve Scalise's life. Brad, of course, is an Iraq combat surgeon, so he knew what to do, and he did save his life. But we don't generally have security with us, but he did.
All right, we're going to continue. Manny Centeno's here. He's the project director of this PEP facility. But Steve Chabot, good luck, stay safe, and thanks for coming on the Bill Cunningham Show.
Thank you very much, Bill. Great to be with you.
Well, let's continue with more until 1 o'clock today. I'll be at this facility, then I'm going to make my way back down to Kenwood. Be with you after 1:30 today. So let's continue with more. Bill Cunningham, the Great American, live with you every day at the home of your Reds and your Bengals. Bengals lose on News Radio 700 WLW.